Hey, Ronnie, what's
What's
going
up,
on, buddy?
Jason? What's up? What's up?
Week nine of Into the Fire on KGRA Digital Broadcasting, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma. How you been?
I've been well. How about you?
I've been really good. I think that a lot of people might think that we actually talk during the week, and that's pretty rare.
It is.
As a matter of fact, in this particular case, I don't think we talked at all, and so we're just really that good to where we're able to come forward and do this without a hitch. For those of you that are joining us, we appreciate you. I hope that there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be tuning in here. Of course, every week, yeah, I see that there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have been tuning in. And if they haven't watched us live, they're checking us out on the recordings, which I know that the both of us actually appreciate it from the bottom of our heart. So thank you very much for doing that. If you don't watch us, then guess what happens? They won't have us on here anymore. So if you continue to watch and if the numbers go through the roof, then of course we are going to continue to do this, and that's what we want to do. We want to have a successful show. So has anything happened for you, Ronnie, that's pretty amazing?
I don't know about amazing, but as far as with the show, some of the guys that I work with, we were out to lunch, and there was actually someone came up and mentioned the thing, and then I ran into the show that they liked it, and then I talked to another officer who was talking about it, so they knew about it, and so we're making
Good.
some inroads here and there with different people.
Good.
But as
I
far
like it.
as yeah, as far as at work this week, nothing super crazy or super interesting. I did help auto theft on some stuff. Um, Kind of was paying attention to some of the stuff you guys were doing. It seems like stuff slowed down for you guys this week compared to how it had been. So
Yeah,
hopefully you
it was
guys have
really
had a
nice.
chance to catch up on stuff.
Well, I had one of those 24-hour shifts on Monday, so you remember those days.
Yes.
That was not any fun. I think I was awake for 40 hours straight, and it was miserable. So I am now coming out of it. I'm starting to feel like my normal self again, and it's taken this many days for that to happen. Yesterday, I talked to a whole room full of assistant U.S. attorneys, and I can tell you this much, that in 4 hours of teaching them basic homicide and crime scene interpretation, the public will be glad to know that they looked much smarter by the end of that 4 hours than they did when we started. And that is I guarantee you that. They may not admit that, but that's definitely what I observed. So
And along those lines, and you can talk about it, that maybe a lot of people don't know, with the Supreme Court ruling, the McGirt hearing, or the ruling several years ago, things with our murders here in Tulsa just completely changed. And so if you want to tell them a little bit about your experience with that. And I know I had a
well,
couple that went federal because of this, but I think you've probably dealt with it more than I did now that I've been gone for a couple years.
yeah. Hi, Susan, up in Kansas. We appreciate you being here. Basically, yeah, half of Oklahoma is technically kind of almost like Indian Nation again, and it's because of a ruling that happened in the Supreme Court. It's known as the McGirt decision, and what that decision was is basically that if you were a victim or a suspect, and you happen to be Native American, and it doesn't matter what the tribe is, but if you were Native American, then it would fall under the jurisdiction of the United States Attorney's Office. And I can tell you that so basically, when you see me or when you would see Ronnie, we actually are probably the most credentialed city cops that you're going to see in the country. We actually have credentials with the U.S. Marshals, the FBI. We're Creek Marshals, and we're Cherokee Marshals, and we're also credentialed as Indian police officers with the Muskogee Creek Nation as well. So we have basically jurisdiction in the upper or the northern district of Oklahoma, and it just adds a whole another layer of complexity. Trust me, I'm not even. We'll have a show about that maybe one day, and that we could talk for hours on that. But we're trying to make the best of it, of course. And so I'll tell you something that happened real quick. That happened today. And I've talked about him a couple of times, and I have to mention this again. So, hey, Amanda, throw up a few of those pictures of that guy that's cooking in my kitchen. There you go. There you go. Now, there's a couple more. Throw the other ones up there too. There, yeah, that's Doug Satchery. Okay, that's him. His name is on that bottle of spice, and Doug. Listen, let me tell you about how cool this guy is. So Doug he's been talking to me through the week, and Doug literally says, I'm going to come up there and I'm going to cook for you guys. And so he goes, I said, well, where are you going to cook this stuff, Doug? And he goes, well, I'll do it at the hotel, and I'll cook up some Cajun chicken and rice. And I said, no, you're not cooking it in any hotel. You're going to come to my house and cook it. So he came over here to my house, and it was super neat to be able to hang out with him. And of course, he left me some cool stuff. A few cool things here, and then a couple of more here. I don't know if Terry can't talk right now, but Teri, if you don't have this in your kitchen, then you need to go down there and you need to get some of Tony Chacheri's seasoning. It's pretty amazing. There you go, right there. And I'm not getting anything for that, but I'll tell you this much. You talk about one cool, down to earth, amazing individual, and we're friends for life. Trust me on that. And he's amazing. This guy drove up from almost Houston to do this today.
I do have one thing that I forgot that happened this week. And I think you were invited and were busy with murder or whatever and didn't show up. But there was an event at a local restaurant this week for our Crime Stoppers program here in Tulsa. And the restaurant was kind enough to give, it was Smitty's Garage Burgers and Beer, I think is what the full name is. But they were kind enough to give 10% of the proceeds on Tuesday night to our Crime Stoppers program, where people can call in anonymously and give information about whatever crime comes up, not just murder. So there was me and Reggie, Matt Frazier, Dave Walker. There were several people who were asked to be there and kind of just, again, as we keep saying, I think every week, because people are knowing us from First 48. So we were there and talking to people, and there was a ton of people in the community that are just so supportive of the police. And we appreciate that. And we appreciate Smitty's helping out with Crime Stoppers. So
yeah, good.
So give them a little shout out.
Go get yourself some Smitty's and help them out for helping us out, and get yourself some of this. And if you walk past the spice aisle, I don't know how in the heck anybody has never had this in their kitchen. And I know that you hadn't, Ronnie, and he made specific mention of you going, I don't know who that guy was. That guy doesn't even know our stuff. I said, he's going to be buying it. Trust me, it's going to happen. And he'll be on board starting today. So, all right, here we go. I think we're going to get rolling with Teri Anderson. This is an episode actually that this is week 9, and I cannot believe that we're already here to week 9, but this is an episode that I'm really excited about. Number one, Teri has never been on a podcast in the history of her life, and how we ended up meeting. This, I got to tell you this story real quick. I just got done teaching in New York City. I was flying back. My connection was in St. Louis, and if anybody wonders, do we ever get recognized? I know you have, Ronnie. You've had people hollering at you when you're driving down the interstate, of all places. Well, I've had that happen to me too, actually. Well, anyway, I thought it was a road rage incident when that thing was happening to me. I was like, oh my gosh, what's about ready to happen here? But they were like, oh, they just wanted to wave. So usually what happens for me, and when I do get to fly throughout various places of the country to teach, you'll get a lot more of that when you're connecting and you're coming back to Tulsa. When you get back to Tulsa, then you're going to have people that may recognize you a lot more there, which is fun. It's always fun. It's never been ugly or anything like that. Well, anyway, I go over there and I'm sitting in these rocking chairs that are sitting up against the wall. And I haven't sat in a rocking chair in forever. And I thought, man, that'll be fun. I'll just go sit over there. And I saw this lady sitting over there, and she was talking to somebody else, I think. And then all of a sudden she starts talking to me, and she goes, are you a police officer? And I said, yeah. But she goes, and I'm looking at her, and Ronnie knows, man, I am not good with remembering people's names. But for some reason, I'm looking at her and I'm like, she does look kind of familiar to me. I just don't know. So I said, well, do I know you from somewhere? And she goes, yeah, I was a juror on one of your cases. And I was like, oh, that's incredible. I want to hear about this. And so I said, well, that's neat. Which case was it? And she says, well, it's that Courtney Palmer case, which, for those of you that are watching this, and if you're avid fans of the show, The First 48, that is arguably the most talked about episode in the history of the program. I mean, it's the first 2-hour episode that they had ever had. And there's a lot, I'm telling you, it's the most talked about episode ever, both good and bad. Of course, I don't agree with most of the bad stuff that's talked about, but nevertheless, we're going to talk about this case, and we're going to talk about it. And before we get there, I'm going to, and it's going to be really fun, because actually, when I said, "Well, what did you think?" and she goes, "Well, she actually was the juror on the female of the duo on this particular case." And I asked her about it, and she goes, "Well, yeah, there was a couple of people that were originally not guilties." And I was like, "Really?" And she goes, "Yeah, and I was one of them." So I, so when she said that, I said, "Oh, we're going to talk. We needed to talk." And so let me read her bio right quick and bring her on. I'm super excited about this. She's been a resident of Tulsa for 12 years and is formerly from Kansas and born and raised in Texas. She's been employed in the oil and gas industry for 34 years, working for 2 Fortune 500 companies during her career. She currently is a senior manager at this oil and gas company here in Tulsa, and she has served as a juror on 2 criminal juries. The first one was a criminal rape case that took place in Ulysses, Kansas, and the second was a first-degree murder trial that happened right here in Tulsa, and that was in 2020. She graduated from Friends University in Wichita, Kansas, and her Bachelor of Arts and MBA with her BA and MBA in Business Administration. She loves to fish and spending time with her husband, children, and I can agree with her on this one, and that's her grandchildren. And I have a couple of those that's just the best fun ever. Let's welcome Teri Anderson to the show.
Hi.
Teri,
Hey, Teri.
I got to tell you, I'm telling you, we've had you're the 9th exceptional guest that we've had on our show. And I'm not just saying that because you're here. I love how we have been having different people, from a prosecutor who is the deputy director of OBN, the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics, to we've had detectives, we've had a variety, a medical examiner investigator, somebody that's putting together a cold case site. I think we've got a really good variety, don't we, Ronnie?
We do. We've had a great variety, and I think that's been one of the things I've liked about this show, and hopefully the people who are watching like that. It's not just a bunch of cops coming on here talking. So I do like the variety.
I do, and it's been a lot of fun, and it's especially fun to talk to somebody. One of my favorite things to do is talk to juries. One of the things that I like to do as a lead detective, and I know Ronnie did this as well. I know what I like to do is number one, I would always try to catch the closing arguments, the full thing. And the reason why I did that, honestly, and I still do it to this day, is because I think that it keeps the defense attorneys a little bit more tame, instead of going to crazy town and that kind of a thing. And then the second thing is I want the juries to see that we actually do care about these cases, which we do. And I think that there's that's important. So let's talk about this case. We're talking about Michaela Riddle's case, and the case has been adjudicated. She's sitting in prison right now. She ended up getting 49 years. And let's talk about that. First of all, we may have to, if we have time, we'll talk about that rape case too. I mean, I've always wanted to be sitting on a jury, to tell you the truth, and that's probably never going to happen for us ever. The only case we'd be able to sit on would be some boring civil case, probably. But I would love to sit on a murder case where they sequestered me for like 8 months. Would be perfect.
You're crazy.
I really would. So tell us, number one, you get selected. How does somebody get selected for a jury? How does that happen?
Well, I can tell you this. I know they called a lot of folks that day because there were actually 2 murder trials going on that week in Tulsa. And so I didn't really even know what was going on I guess in Tulsa that week, but somebody at work told me, "Oh, I wonder if you're going to get on one of those murder trials." And I was like, "Oh no, it's going to take a while. I can't just go in there and that, if I'm chosen, it's going to, maybe I might be there a while," kind of like your 8-month situation, Jason. But no, I did get called into one room, and they separated the group out into 2 groups because there was 2 trials. And then they went through and they would talk to each potential juror and kind of just get some feedback from them. But one of the questions was, "Have you ever seen the first 48?" And I said, "No." A lot of people had seen it. I had not ever even heard of the show. And so, but I was like juror number 40 something or 50. I was getting close to that that end. And I thought I'll never get picked because there's a lot of people in front of me,
Mhm.
And so they have so many preemptive strikes and then so many for cause, I think. And it kept getting closer and closer. And they called us back in after they had interviewed us and looked at all of our written material that we had to provide and questions that we had answered. And they started calling out who was staying and who was going. And it got down to me, and that all the cause strikes were gone. All the preemptive strikes were gone. It finally got to me, and I was chosen. And there were a couple more after me that actually got on the jury
Okay.
too.
And just for
What?
the record, let me mention this real quick, Ronnie. Just for the record, I did not know Teri before that chance meeting in the airport, and this is long after the trial. Okay, so I don't want somebody to think, oh, hey, he must have known. No, I've never met Teri. This isn't the first time I've met a juror. I've met him on a couple of other cases, the Best Buy double.
Yep.
And then there was that double with Jermaine Jackson from way back in the day. Remember that, Ronnie?
Yep.
So anyway, go ahead, Ronnie. I didn't mean to interrupt. I just I didn't want to forget to say that before people go, oh,
And I guess for people who don't know, what were some of the questions that they asked you, and what were some of the stuff you had to provide that's written? Just tell them a little bit more about the process there.
A lot of those questions are about how you feel about certain things that happened. Do you place judgment on someone immediately? How kind of some history of things that you've experienced and how you feel about those things. Also, just some questions. Have you ever served on a jury before? What kind of trial was that? Just really kind of dives deep. I mean, it was like, I bet 5 or 6 pages of questions that you answered and wrote your answer in, and then I guess they just reviewed them. And when they got to you, they knew what questions to ask based off of what you had filled out. They had the time to go through them and maybe mark some questions. In fact, when they got to mine, they said, "So we see you have served on a jury before. What kind of jury was it? And what was the outcome of that trial?" And that was an innocent a verdict for that one. And so I think that was probably good for the defendant attorney to hear, And so I just was not one that was chosen to be kicked off.
So was it the defense attorneys, the district attorney, and the judges all asking you questions?
Yeah. The judge didn't really ask any questions. If there was a question that came up and maybe there was an objection about what to ask a juror or something, she might have jumped in, but very, very little.
Okay. Go ahead, Jason.
What she's talking about is basically what happens is, and I think that it's via voter registration. I should know this, and I think it's voter registration. That's where they end up getting the pool of people that they're able to take for. Is that right, Ronnie? I don't want to act like I'm stupid here.
Yeah, I don't remember really. At one point I thought it was driver's license, but then the voter thing does sound part of it too.
It actually might be driver's license, because just because somebody's not a registered voter doesn't mean they can't go and be a juror. So It may be that actually. But what happens is that they get selected, and then they go down to the basement at the courthouse. They're supposed to show up, and then you guys have a pool of jurors, and then you go and you get sent to a courtroom. And then there's something that what she's referring to where you get asked a ton of questions. It's called voir dire. And I know that there's different pronunciations for it, but it's French for meaning something. I don't remember what it was, but voir dire. And basically that's just the prosecution and the defense's opportunity to be able to question the jurors. And really, I think it's fun because, Ronnie, did you sit as a case agent ever?
I have. Yep.
Okay. So we both have sat case agent. I've sat probably 15, maybe more times. And what I love about it is that the prosecutors actually give us the opportunity to sit and we sit through voir dire right along with them, and they actually listen to us, and they have for me, and they'll let me help pick the jury. It's a lot of fun. Of course, I don't have the experience that they do, but I know that there's been times when they're like wanting to strike somebody. I'm like, heck no, I like that guy or gal. I like that person, and so I may have seen something that they didn't.
And if I think Jason explained it, but if not, if someone didn't completely understand, basically when you set case agent, it's I think maybe I was stealing this phrase from you. You're kind of like a mini DA. You get to sit at the table with the district attorneys through the entire trial,
Yeah.
and have your input. You're not getting to question any of the witnesses or anything like that, but you're able to converse with the DA's office and the prosecutors throughout the whole trial.
Right. So Teri, here you are. You get selected for this jury. And and I'm sure you were just super stoked, right? Because I would think that everybody wants a murder trial. They don't want some boring fraud case. They want some, I don't know how you felt about it. You might have been like, no.
Well, when I saw the defendant, I think it really kind of, I was like, oh gosh, do I really want to be a part of this? Because you see she's young age and she has been charged with murder, and it kind of hits you right in the stomach. And so I was thinking through all those things as they're picking, and I'm thinking, boy, I sure really hope they don't pick me. But I knew that I knew what it was like to serve on a jury, and I knew some of the things that you need to be aware of. So if I was selected, I'd be willing to try to do my best.
So in sitting there and you start listening to this trial, what's going through your mind as you're starting to hear these things? And I'm kind of what I'm really looking for that, and I'm kind of curious as to what your perception is. And I want you to be honest. I don't want you to sugarcoat it because you're talking to Ronnie and I. I want to know really what you thought about the police department or how they came across as witnesses. If they weren't coming across very convincing, then I want you to share that, because we want to get better from that. So tell me kind of how that flowed and what you were hearing and what you were thinking as you're hearing this stuff.
Yeah. So, when you start hearing about it, and I knew nothing about the case, nothing, and wasn't familiar with it at all. And so as I started hearing about what had occurred and how people were impacted, and, and just started hearing the witness statements and everything, I just am kind of overwhelmed, really. I took a ton of notes. I truly just listened really intently because, I was afraid I would miss a key part of or key message that needed to be heard. And so I was kind of in disbelief in some of it that this could even happen, that some of the scenarios that took place with that case of mom and kids all being in the house doing some drugs together. And, it's just not, it's just their way of life. And there's, everybody's got their own way of life, but it's just something that was foreign to me. And so trying to, empathize with that whole situation, and truly it was shocking. Some of the stuff was just shocking to me.
The thing that I find interesting what you just said, when I've talked to people who find out what I did and they weren't in the police world, I tell people I'm glad there's people that have your view, and because Jason and we dealt with that segment of society for so long, and I think it's good that most people don't have to deal with that. But it's an eye opener, I think, like you're saying, that there's so much going on in the world that people don't know about. And I'm just, again, it's good when I hear people say that, I think.
Yeah, it gives us hope.
And
Yeah.
I'm one of those few people that really see the good in everyone, and so it's really hard for me to hear some of these things and think, surely not, and so I give everybody the benefit of the doubt until I see that it just can't be, that the good can't just be. And so, when Jason, you testified, I'll mention you there. You testified, and
okay,
they also,
it's got it. Wait, hang on a minute, Teri. Now, I didn't say that. For me, it's got to be good. Okay, I'm super sensitive.
Oh yeah,
I'm just messing with you.
Yeah,
No, go ahead.
You probably start crying. Honestly, I just thought you were really arrogant, and
really,
and I also thought that
we're having some connection problems. I don't know what's going on. No, I'm messing with you. Please go ahead.
No, and I also thought that it was really difficult to see you interview the defendant because y'all showed some video of her interview and everything, and I was just like, man, I just don't like how he's treating her. And but I like I said, I didn't know anything about the history of the case or anything, so I was just taking it in as what I could see. And so when we would go back into the jury room to discuss, I said, I don't know about that police officer. I mean, talked about it because I just didn't know whether or not you just felt she was guilty or they were guilty from the first. And I just really dove into some of the behaviors I saw and things. And,
Mhm.
but I have seen since then a lot of first 48s. I say a lot. I'd say maybe, and not even a whole season, but a lot of Tulsa. And I see a difference now because I do see the compassion that you do have, and especially you'll say to others, "I know you're hurting. I know how that feels," and you really do try to show empathy and caring to anyone that you're interviewing.
Well, I got to
And
tell you something. No, go
no,
ahead,
go
Ronnie.
go, Jay. No, go ahead.
Well,
She's
what I was
talking
going
about
to
you.
say, what I was going to say real quick is I was going to say that when you were saying something about how when you were sitting there and you're like always trying to look at the good in people and it's really hard for you to understand this. I actually, believe it or not, I'm kind of the softy in the office. It's like my kryptonite. If you knew me, it is my kryptonite that has affected me. Where I'm walking out of there going, I really like this person, and they're like, "Are you nuts? This person did this. You're crazy. You need to wake up." And literally, I think that what happened in this particular case, honestly, Teri, is the fact that first of all, I knew the victim, and I really I really felt sorry for this guy. I really did. The encounters that I had with him when, of course, it's different. His encounters with the police, I would say, were two different things. If you were in a uniform and you were stopping him on a traffic stop, it may not be necessarily a pleasant experience for the police. For me, I would see him out and about, or I had seen him out and about, and it was always, "Yes, sir. Hey, how are you, sir?" And it was things like that. It was a completely different interaction because I wasn't out there stopping him, kind of a deal. I was out there just kind of, he would stop me. So I think that in part, maybe, and I'll admit that I was really, really upset by the fact that he was killed. And it really, really personally affected me. And in some cases, I think that it's hard for us to just completely shield that. And Ronnie knows, he lived with me during this event, and it was an up and down roller coaster where I was really, really, really upset about what had happened to that young man. So, but anyway,
Yeah,
go
and
ahead, Ronnie.
that's what I was going to say is that for people that don't know, Jason he really took a lot of these cases to heart, and he was a lot more empathetic, sympathetic towards everybody than for me, for sure. I tried to stay as just focused as I could and not get try to let any emotion get involved. But that's also a thing that is an eye opener, I think, for us as the police, and can be frustrating at times, is because when cases go to court, not everything is allowed in the testimony. So stuff that we know, and like you were saying, you don't get the whole story necessarily because of whatever legal reasons something can't happen. And in the interviews that we've done, it just depends on the situation, the tactic, or the approach you have to take with people. Because if we can sit there and talk to a person like we are talking, then great, we would love that, and it goes
Yeah.
quick, and we get the information at times, especially people who have been in the criminal world, for lack of better terms. Sometimes you do have to raise your voice or use some cuss words just to get their attention and make them realize, hey, these guys aren't playing around, and not let them get over on you, because that is a lot of times what they do in their daily lives. It's how can
Yeah.
they get an edge on somebody and stuff like that. So
Yeah. And
anyway, I
I
just
got to
wanted to
tell
say
you,
that.
I appreciate your honesty. I really
I
do.
do
That
too.
means a lot. I'm not upset by that whatsoever. Actually, I'm proud of you for stepping up and saying that, because that's something that just helps me become better. And I want to be a better. We all want to be better. We want to be successful and so forth. So from there, it goes. You're going through this transition. You're hearing about. And just for the people that are listening here, this is not your run of the mill murder here. This is a situation where this young man, the victim in this particular case, got tortured for probably anywhere from 7 to 8 hours, or maybe even a little longer than that. And we're talking tortured to the point of, not to be too graphic, but literally just to mention a couple of things like boiling water on the stove and then pouring it on him and stuff like that while he was in a bathtub. So it's not just that, but it was a number of different things that happened and transpired through the night. And it was horrific. I mean, it's not the run of the mill kind of things that Ronnie and I deal with. And if you were to watch the episode, you can see it in our face when we're hearing the details of it. where I think we had a hard time keeping that face of just kind of, we're trying not to react, but I think it was really kind of difficult for us both. So as this is going on, you're hearing about the horrific events that's going through here. What was some other pivotal things that or other moments through the trial that really stood out to you?
Just knowing that people were in the house where he was being tortured and did nothing. That was probably the most powerful thing. I just could not imagine knowing someone was in my home down the hall and torturing someone, and I would not take action and do something to help him. That was just heartbreaking to me. I also struggled with a lot of times a juror, and myself included, will think about what is the evidence that's not there. And so I caught myself thinking a few times, well, where's the DNA evidence? Where's this? Where's that? And I thought, but that's not been presented, so I can't even think about that. I need to think about what has been presented and what does that story tell me. And as you mentioned it, and I don't want to jump the gun, Jason, but you mentioned I was one of the holdouts of 2 saying they were innocent, and the other 10 saying that he was guilty or she was guilty, and that I was initially one of those. And it was just because I was having some of those thoughts. And then so when I kind of thought about why am I feeling this way, I started thinking about the evidence. And it really helped me focus on what I did know to be the fact. And those other things just were not presented.
Yeah. So did the jury, I mean, I know you guys aren't supposed to talk about the case when you leave to go to lunch, etc. Did you guys, as a jury, did you guys kind of get close though, as far as getting to know one another? Did you guys talk to one another or any of that?
I was the oldest juror, and there was it seemed to be a lot of younger women that kind of seemed to connect. And there was it was really interesting because in the jury room, we would just we went around the room and introduced ourselves and everything. But during the trial itself, we all would go our own ways during lunch. I mean, it wasn't any commingling that I saw, of anybody kind of hanging out together. But when we went into the jury room, you could kind of feel some people kind of grouping together and kind of visiting and things. Whereas I like I said, I was the old one out. So I kind of just sat over there and minded my own business. And
Yeah.
there was another man that sat beside me, and I'll never forget. He was the other one that said she was innocent. And then he and I kind of connected with that.
Well, let's talk about that then. So you guys go, once this trial it's went through well, first of all, what was your thoughts of the public defender, or I don't even know if it was a public defender or not, but the defense attorney? What was your thoughts of the defense attorney and the prosecutor?
The defense attorney I thought was outstanding. I really did. I thought he did a super great job, and I just really kind of connected with him on some of the things that he pointed out weren't there, that you could you couldn't convict her because was she really there, that type of thing. He was very, very good. The prosecutor, it's funny, I don't remember who that was as well, but the defendant's attorney, I can remember just about real clearly who he was.
Okay. No, and I can see how that would be the case. Some of them are exceptional. Even some of the public defenders are exceptional attorneys.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're really good. So, and just to let people know, there was actually originally 4 people that were charged in this particular case, and one of the people, by the name, well, it's on the news. I mean, it's news. Janetta Thomas. Actually, she was originally charged as being involved, and then she became a witness. And then there was Charletha Mack was the other one. Do you remember any of those? How about your feelings when either of those 2 testified, if you remember?
Well, I can tell you, I because I knew that they had lied, and because that was part of the testimony of the original, when they started talking about initially when they went in there, they had lied. It was very hard for me to believe anything that they had said. I just didn't know if they were out for themselves or truly telling the truth. And I know that they swore to their statements, but I knew they had lied initially. And it was really hard for me to believe anything they said. Plus, thinking of their character of letting that go on in the house that they are sitting there in was really disturbing.
Yeah.
Was
Now, go ahead, Ronnie.
was there any of the testimony that, for lack of better words, was boring to you? Was like any scientific? I know you said something about there wasn't any DNA, but I could see at times when like some scientist or someone would get up there and be using a bunch of big words and trying to explain scientific stuff. Was there any of that you're like, oh my gosh, is this over? What's going on here?
There wasn't really any of that in this trial. It was just real matter of fact. This is what happened. And there was not really any scientific testimony that I recall. But
And
it
I
wouldn't have
know, I
been
guess
much.
another example I can think of in the trials I sat through would be when they were presenting the evidence or talking about the pictures, and our CSI people, the crime scene guys, it may be hours that they're up saying, "Oh, this picture is facing north and was this," and then we took this and it was item 3. Was any of that at all that you were just like, "Hey, let's move on along
Mm-mm.
here"?
No, no. And
Okay.
there was very little of that I recall. I mean, and maybe Jason remembers, but I just don't remember hardly any of that being shown in this trial.
Okay.
Yeah, for some reason, I think that I was a case agent in this, where I was sitting in the. Do you remember if I was sitting there for the whole case? Because I
I
kind of
think
wanted to say that I was.
I think you were. I think you
Yeah, I
were.
was. And
Mhm.
so in this particular deal, for me personally, I remember that I was moved most by Janetta. Janetta Thomas was the young lady that her boyfriend was in the house, and Janetta really broke down and she cried. And first of all, once I realized that I was upset with her originally because she had lied to me flat out. But I mean, she really kind of grew on me. And when I got to know who she was after that, she sat in jail for a considerable amount of time. And I thought she was amazing on the stand. That's just my perception. She broke down and cried, and I mean, it was raw emotion. It wasn't like manufactured to me. It was
Mhm.
real, and I thought that her testimony for me personally was the most powerful of the entire trial. Uh, the other lady, I wasn't, and you know who I'm talking about, Ronnie. I was
I
just kind
do.
of like, yeah, okay, whatever. But I don't know. It's an interesting deal. I really do appreciate some of the things that you're saying. So you go back to the jury room. That you've went through this whole trial.
Mhm.
You go back to the jury room. Well, first of all, the instructions. There's no way in the world I'm gonna believe you if you say that those jury instructions aren't the most boring thing you ever have to sit through in your life. Oh my gosh. It's first of all, you probably don't even understand half of them. They're just so.
Mhm.
I wish there was a way they could make that more entertaining, but they're just brutal. It's brutal for me. I know it's brutal for the
Mhm.
jury. So when you go back there to the jury room to deliberate, what happens? I would love to know.
Yeah, so we get in there, and of course we all go over the charges again as a group, and then we decided who would kind of be the head juror or I'm not sure what that term is. I can't
The
remember.
foreman.
Yeah,
Foreman.
the foreman.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And so we kind of vote on a foreman, and so he says, let's go ahead and take a vote to see where we are. And there were 10 guilty and 2 not guilty, and everybody's just like, what's your problem? Yeah. And I'm like, and I was not, they didn't really like me. I can tell you that, but I wasn't in there to be liked. I was in there to try to do the right thing. And so, I started challenging some of the things and bringing out some points that I had seen or made. And this man beside me, he did too, but he and I, both became very emotional because we almost felt like, at some point it was it was tough. I mean, it was almost like I don't want to say bullying. It was kind of like, well, this, and kind of feeling pressure. It felt a lot of pressure, and so,
Yeah.
but we took another vote, and actually, what we did next was determine whether or not it would be first degree or second degree murder, and we decided most wanted to convict her on first degree, but I would not budge on first degree. I said second degree because I did not believe that she went over there intentionally to murder him. I believe that if she had that intention, I was not. not sure of that. She didn't take a weapon. She was throwing ice and soup at him and things. And so, to me, that's just not being prepared to go over and say first-degree murder. I mean, I just didn't
That's
feel that way.
yeah.
What were
And
some of I'm sorry, Jason. What were some of
no,
the things you and that other guy were bringing up that you had issues with specifically,
yeah.
if you remember?
Well, yeah, some of it was the DNA. Some of it, a lot of people were putting a lot of uh, uh, focus on the people that testified. Oh, I believed her. I believed her. And a couple of us did not. And it's just because of what I said. If she's lying, can you believe her now? And of course, they would say, well, all of them were lying. At one point, all of them were lying. And I said, yeah, that's true. So it was really about that I think we would like to have seen more evidence that she was actually there in the room while this happened. She didn't have any blood on her as she walked through the quick trip. I'm looking for those things in the video. We actually came back out and watched the video again of her being in the quick trip because we wanted to see her mannerisms and things. I mean, if she's involved in torturing someone, you'd think, well, she would have something on her that would signify that she was part of it.
Yeah.
And so that it was little things like that we challenged.
I'm going to tell you a saying. Just for the listeners, I'll tell you a saying that the prosecutors love to throw out there, and it's one of my favorite sayings. It needs to be like a line in a song, but basically, it's you don't have angels for actors when you cast a play in hell. And isn't that how it goes? I think that's if you cast a play in hell, you don't have angels as actors. That's what it is. And so everybody lies to us. I mean, I don't. I'd say 95% of the people that we deal with, and Ronnie has a saying, what you're saying when we're talking to people.
I don't think an interview should last more than 10 minutes if someone's being honest with you. It doesn't take that long to tell a story. So, I said that all the time, and we would have interviews that would go hours and hours, and then finally they would come around and tell us a story that we could back up with evidence, whether it was video or other people or whatever. And I'm like, why didn't you just tell us this to begin with? And they're like, well, they pick the range of excuses that we've heard over the years. But yeah, you should be able to do an interview in 10 minutes if people aren't going to lie to you.
Now, what's interesting about this and what's interesting about Teri is that when we sat down and talked in that St. Louis airport, which I'm so thankful that I ran across you. I really am. I thought that was so neat to be able to talk to you. And as we talked about it, you were having real troubles. You were still having trouble with the fact that you went guilty. Am I right?
Yes, that's correct.
And as a matter of fact, well, you talked about it like even within that day or two, you were thinking about it. And I think you were talking to somebody else about that case. Am I right?
That very day that I met Jason, I had gone online and taken the defendant's picture. It had been just bothering me, and a friend wanted to know, and I was with a friend, or I say friend, an work associate, in Washington, D.C. that week. And something sparked my memory of the trial or something, and I had gone and taken her picture, and then also looked up the unspeakable A&E first 48 episodes and sent it to her and said, you just got to watch this. But I've struggled to this day. And I'll tell you why I've struggled so much is I can see those two mothers, Courtney's mother and then Michaela's mother in the trial. And I see those faces. I'm a mother. Seeing them and seeing the devastation of losing their children. They both lose on this.
Yeah, there's never any winners.
Yeah, no. And that I think is what's bothered me so tremendously.
And so we talked. Go ahead, Ronnie.
I was just thinking before we get to what you guys got into that maybe helped her a little bit, what did the other 10 jurors say that changed your mind ultimately?
Well, I could agree that it was second degree murder. I was having a hard time determining whether he was kidnapped. He was invited to the home. He had someone waiting for him outside for a period of time. I felt like he could have left at any time, but I think it got to a point where he could not leave. And that's where the level of the jurors talked about that would be kidnapping when he's no longer free to go because they're
Mhm.
holding him there.
Yeah.
Then that helped me kind of get to that point. Because
Okay.
when I think of kidnap, I'm thinking I'm going to go grab you up and take you somewhere and keep you, and you have never a chance to get away.
Right.
And then the other, there was was it gang affiliated was the other charge, and I never saw any evidence that she was in a gang. She may have been, I don't know. So
Mhm.
we found her not guilty on that. And then the other charge was desecration of the body. We did find her guilty on that. And I think the thing, Ronnie, that really led me to the guilty plea, and I don't want to steal Jason's thunder here, was that, and I had forgotten this, and this really helped me when I talked to Jason, is she had some boots that she had, I don't know whether purchased it just real soon around the murder, but that her boot tag was out in at where they had taken the body.
Yeah.
And that to me said she was there. And that really helped me change my verdict.
Okay.
Which actually that tag actually said U-turn technology. And so what I did is I Googled U-turn technology on boots, and then it told me that it was an Ariat boot. And then from that Ariat boot, we found an Ariat boot box inside of the truck belonging to the other defendant. And actually, just to mention this, because we didn't mention this earlier, but both of the defendants, Gerald Lowe and Michaela Riddle, they'd actually split. They weren't on trial together. They had separated their trials. So Teri was just the juror for Michaela,
Mhm.
and both of them got convicted actually. But let me ask you this: so we're sitting there and we're talking in the airport, and I started telling you some additional details about the case, the behind the scenes stuff that unfortunately we weren't able to really get into. What was it about that kind of maybe made you feel a little bit better about your verdict?
I think when you start talking about their behaviors in between driving from the house and being tracked to where they went, what they did before and even some of the things around the pigs and things, and then on going on and having a relationship with each other, and then determining what to do with the body. And I just think all some of that stuff I did not know, and it
Yeah.
just kind of made me say, yeah, I did the right thing. I know I did the right thing. I do believe she's guilty. And I'd like to think that she's not because that's just my heart. But the facts tell me that that's the truth.
Well, and what Terry's referring to, essentially, the death penalty was on the table, and Michaela, believe it or not, I was really shocked that she actually reached out because when we had contact with her, she was like a female devil. I thought she'd had her horns removed or something, but she was not easy to deal with when we first met her, Ronnie. And I
Yep.
think a lot of that had to do with the fact that she was under the influence of drugs. And the next day, surprisingly, when we went over to get her DNA, it was the next day or two, she was actually a completely different person. I was shocked, and so much so that I said, "Hey, are you willing to talk to us?" And she's like, "Nope." She wasn't there yet. But anyway, so what ended up happening is she had reached out, or her attorney reached out. They wanted to give a statement, and she's kind of being nice about it, but essentially what the deal was is that they had actually went over to a house, and the feeding him to hogs was legit. I mean, they were going to actually go and feed Courtney to a bunch of pig. We're talking hogs that look like miniature horses. These things are like, they eat forks and plates. They're massive, massive animals. And the person they were going over there to do this with, he wasn't home. So of course they do what everybody does when you've got a dead body in your truck, is you go over to this other location, and of course you have sex. And that's what they did. I'm sitting there going, what? If this thing didn't get any more crazy on some of these cases, this case just continued to get crazier and crazier. Ronnie, were you in that interview with me on that deal with
I
her?
don't remember if I was in that one.
So
But
anyway,
I think for the people who don't know, maybe you were going to get to this, is they ultimately didn't feed him to the hogs. They buried him or put him in a shallow hole and burn him up. So
yeah,
um, that was
and
crazy.
and
When
really, well, really, what happened is we put out a tip, or we put out needing information, and we deliberately said we were hearing on the streets. The word on the streets was that he'd been taken down to Muskogee and fed to hogs. So I wanted it broadcast just like that because I knew that was going to get people in their living rooms going, what? What did he just say?
Mhm.
People were going to be talking about that. And of course, one guy that lived down that way, he ended up calling us, thank heavens. And he remembered seeing him. So that's kind of what led us to that direction. Go ahead, Ronnie. You had more?
As far as back with Teri and in the deliberation room was,
Mhm.
how long did it go on before you were convinced? And then I guess walk the people through the finishing product of what you guys have to do and going back into the courtroom and stuff like that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so I'm thinking we went into the jury room about 5 or 6 o'clock p.m. that day, something like that, and I think we were in there about 3 to 4 hours deliberating. And so it was kind of getting late at night, and I thought, well, we're done if after we've made the decision. We walked out, and the juror or the the foreman of the jury told we were finished, and so they reconvened, brought everybody in to hear the verdict, and then they said, now you've got to go to sentencing. And I was like, tonight? I was like, really? And so they send us back in and they tell us what all they wouldn't tell you what you were allowed to give them for a sentence. I mean, it was kind of a strange deal. I mean, because then you tell them what you think it is, and then the judge will adjust, I think, is how that works on what they feel is appropriate based off of what the jury tells her. And it was a female judge. And so we were there till probably 12:30.
Yeah, it was really late.
Mm-hmm. And
really
so
late.
we came back with our sentencing, and I will tell you this was impacted me so much, and the man that sat beside me as we were in the jury room. I cried the whole time. And people that know me on here knows I'm a big emotional mess sometimes when things really touch my heart. But I cried the whole time. I cried the whole time through the sentencing, and I cried while they presented to the judge. And when I walked out of there, I felt like I'd been run over by a Mack truck.
Yeah.
Because it just really, it was really tough on me emotionally. And my husband came and picked me up at 1 a.m. there at the courthouse. And they had told us, if you feel unsafe, we'll walk y'all out. They were a little concerned because it was gang related, which I wasn't ever convinced of that because I didn't hear that, but they said they were. And so they walked out the folks that wanted to be walked out. And that was that.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're approaching the 54-minute mark is when we kind of wrap things up. And I got to tell you, Teri, for me personally, I appreciate the fact that you served as a juror. And we know that that's not an easy thing for anybody to do. And for 12 people to come to a unanimous verdict, I think, of course, that where I think you made the right choice. And I hope that after our discussions that you feel better about the ultimate decision and so forth.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on here. It's been great.
Yeah, and Ronnie, it's such a pleasure to meet you. And Jason, I hope I see you again someday.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I absolutely, I think you're great. And I want to thank you personally for, both Ronnie and I think this has been a really interesting 54 minutes, kind of getting an idea as to how this all works. And so to the viewers, reach out, write questions, etc. If you have any questions and so forth, then we'll try to answer them. And I want to thank everybody for being here. I haven't decided who the next guest is going to be. I've kind of dropped the ball on that yet again, but we got to get off of here. So I will put up the next guest and we'll see what happens. But thanks again, Teri. Appreciate you very, very much. Thank you.
All
right.
Thank you, ma'am.
See you next week, guys. Week 10 next week. Watch other episodes. Bye.